Welcome to Dog Day Afternoon. I am Gilles Gallant with BetsTV. You can follow me on Twitter at GDog5000. It's the betting show where we talk NFL, give a little bit of sports betting advice, and because I'm an old fogey, I like to give a little unsolicited life advice along the way. A couple picks as well, and the main thing that I try to stress about Dog Day Afternoon is we do not take things too seriously around here. Again, we're just talking football. It's not like we're talking about vaccinations or politics or whatever that's going to be divisive, although he is wearing a Duke hoodie. This is Eliot Crist, very divisive team. Eliot Crist, the people's champ, chief operating officer at FTNNetwork, joining me this week for Dog Day Afternoon. Elliot, thank you for joining me, man.
Pleasure to be here. Yeah, I had the Duke hoodie on, and honest to God, I didn't even realize it. I had just let the dog out, and it's cold around here. And then you called me out for the Duke hoodie, so I had to double down and put a Duke jersey on top of it. So
we talked about this off the air, but who are you repping right today from Duke alumni?
I got Tyus Jones. So nice. I love that Duke team with him and Okafor and Winslow and Quinn, right? The guy that ended up on the Lakers. That beat Wisconsin. Grayson Allen was on that team. He was the freshman, and everyone was like, who is this guy coming in the game and saving them? And turns out he was a 5-star, like, elite player, right?
Yeah, and then turns out the next year he became the next hated Duke player, just deciding to trip every single person that he defended. So we're going to get talking about NFL today. And one of the things that I like to do, Elliot, is we live in a hot take culture. I love throwing out just these scalding hot takes. Like, it basically burns my mouth to even say it out loud. And it's a little segment I like to call Apparently. And what I do is I basically will maybe throw out just kind of maybe some of the most ridiculous hot takes you could think of, but there is some truth to them. So the first one this week, after week 7 results, Elliot, apparently Patrick Mahomes is the worst quarterback in the NFL. He has 9 interceptions. That's league worst. I know that this isn't a quarterback stat, but the Chiefs are 3-4 now. They put up the lowest point total in a game with the Chiefs with him at quarterback, just 3 points against the Titans. Not to mention the fact that it's really difficult for the Chiefs to kind of build around him with the fact that it's such a large cap hit that he has. Elliot, is it apparent it is to me as it is to you that Patrick Mahomes is the worst quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, listen, when you watch the Jets and you see Zach Wilson and you watch, Houston run out Davis Mills, you're just like, God, these guys are so much better than Patrick Mahomes right now. It is amazing how we live in a hot take society. Like, I'm seeing tweets about Mahomes is no longer a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and it's like, do we really want to do this? Yeah. Do we really want to do this? Or because every quarterback goes through rough spots, right? Like, that's part of the ebbs and flows of gambling. It's part of the ebbs and flows of football, and it's part of the ebbs and flows of life, right? Like, I think the Chiefs' offense is feeling the pressure of their defense being so bad that they're forcing the ball a lot. And one big thing that's happened this year is that Mahomes historically has destroyed teams when they blitz him, and this year they're not blitzing him, and they're still actually getting home. So basically, ever since that Super Bowl where he was under so much pressure, they tried to retool the offensive line. It hasn't worked tremendously well. But this team is going to regress to the mean. And if you look at the remaining schedule too, it's pretty light. Like, there's room here for the Chiefs to go on a run. And Mahomes, he threw 5 touchdown passes a couple weeks ago, right? They just won 31-13. He's had some monster performances this year. So
he has.
I was shocked. I know you weren't suggesting it, but I do have to say I was shocked that how bad the Titans' defense was. They held them to 3 points.
Especially with how many guys they were missing as well, because outside of Kevin Byard, I don't think I could have named another player in the secondary for Tennessee coming into that game. And I think one of the things that obviously it's a hot take, and I think we're going to be a little over the top with that if saying that he is the worst quarterback in the NFL, because again, we're still playing in a league with Davis Mills and Zach Wilson and even to a lesser extent, Jared Goff, and I think the one thing that I want people to kind of remember about Mahomes as well is that the games that they lost, it was like razor thin margins. Like, they probably should have beat the Ravens. The Chargers, again, if the Chargers weren't so aggressive and going forward on 4th down and getting that clinching touchdown at the end of the game, the Chiefs were probably going to march down and get a field goal and probably win that game as well. And we wouldn't even be talking about the Chiefs' struggles. We would just be like, oh, there are a couple hiccups, but they're right there. They're still the favorites to win the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. So, but I think it is alarming that we're seeing Patrick Mahomes not really be able to summon the magic, that we've seen even just in the Super Bowl against the 49ers and even some of the playoff runs, like where they'd be at home and they'd be down by 2 or 3 scores. Like even this game against the Titans, I was sitting there, I'm sure everybody was looking at their phone at halftime and being like, all right, is this the time that we live bet this Chiefs money line? Because they've done it so many times before, and not being able to even score a touchdown, especially with that past Super Bowl against the Bucs, not scoring a touchdown. And then here, and then just some of the results that we've been seeing, it's very discouraging. And for anybody who maybe has Chiefs futures, maybe they put some money on Patrick Mahomes to start the season for MVP. He's already up to like plus 4,000 to win MVP. That's the highest odds he's ever had for MVP odds since he's entered the league as a starter as well. So again, just a lot of trouble in KC, but I think there is some merit to saying that we are seeing, I don't know, I hate to use the R word, but regression, I guess, maybe from the Chiefs. We're going to move on to the next subject here. This one is a bit of a hot take, but I think it has some merit as well. And I kind of want to know what your thoughts are on this. So apparently, Elliot, offensive lines are overrated because we're seeing Ja'Marr Chase right now just completely destroy secondaries. And the big debate coming into this year was that they should have took Penei Sewell over Ja'Marr Chase. And other things that we have seen this year is like the Browns, for example, they do lead the league in rushing, and their offensive line is touted as a top 5 unit. But again, they're 3-4 or 3-4 this year, 4-3 rather. So just they've seen some struggles as well. And it's always been kind of taught to you from being young and just watching the NFL that offensive line is king. Like basically the teams that have the best offensive lines are usually going to be the ones that are left standing near the end of the season. And Cincinnati is really bucking that trend, at least in my opinion, they are. And I wanted to know, is it apparent to me as it is to you, Elliot, that offensive lines are being a little bit overrated this year?
I think that, listen, Sewell versus Chase was also like one elite prospect versus another elite prospect. That's one of the things that we forget. And while Sewell got drafted by the Lions, he's playing phenomenal. Unfortunately, the Lions' number 1 receiver is DeAndre Swift. And while Swift is a great player, he still plays running back. And that's not good for success, right? So, honestly, you looked at both the rosters and you're like, well, Chase probably makes more sense in Detroit and Sewell probably makes more sense in Cincinnati. But the Bengals, honestly, their entire roster is playing a lot better than we expected, right? Coming into the year, they were not touted as a top defense. They were not touted as a secondary we were worried about. And they played good football. They've also played, an easier schedule before that Ravens win. If you looked at their, beating Pittsburgh, beating Jacksonville, these aren't exactly wins that you jump for joy out of. And, you mentioned if the Chiefs, the ball bounces a different way a couple times. Same thing with the Ravens, right? Like, if the Colts don't miss a game-winning field goal, if they don't hit a 67-yard field goal against the Lions to come back with 20 seconds to go, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't fumble, this team could have 2 wins right now. They could be 2-5. So I do think, that kind of margin it's just so thin for wins and losses in the NFL, which I think is why you love underdogs and plus money, because that margin is so thin. So let's take the odds in our favor.
That's what I call it, man. Yeah.
Chase has just been unbelievable. He was the first top 5 receiver drafted since Corey Davis, and they don't tend to go top 5. And he looks every bit in that Julio Jones, AJ Green class. He's just absolutely coming in and dominating. And
it's really shocking too, with both him and Micah Parsons, both kind of sitting out their final year of eligibility and coming into the NFL. I was a little worried about whether or not they could make impacts like the way that, if there's not recent game tape. And again, you're kind of seeing players like in that age range being able to sit out what I would call very impactful year of college to be able to adjust their rankings, whether it be for drafting or even just getting to a respected team. And they're bucking that trend as well. And I think the one thing I always go back to with offensive lines being overrated, and I know that obviously I'll get a little bit, I'm wearing a Cowboys jersey. One of the big things that was always touted about the Cowboys year in, year out, yeah, Dak might struggle. Yeah, Zeke is struggling. But that offensive line unit, man, that's the one that's going to be able to keep you in contention. Well, you take Tyron Smith off that offensive line, that whole offensive line just falls apart. It's not as highly touted as I think people would like to say. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that I just think that offensive line, while I think it's still important to have a strong offensive line to go deep and win a Super Bowl, you can get to that level with patchwork. I mean, Kansas City is probably the best example. Like last year going through the playoffs, mind you having Mahomes and all that talent, but their offensive line was battered throughout the entire playoffs, and they still made it to the Super Bowl. So I just think that I don't want to say that offensive lines are overrated, but I feel like at the same time, whenever we're kind of in the position of top of the draft and looking at offensive line prospects, that we may have to start looking at skill position players maybe a little bit differently of how they can impact the team going forward. And that's just kind of what I'm thinking as well. I'm wondering, do you kind of agree with that sentiment?
I think one of the biggest things is that there's no what's the phrase? There's more than one way to skin a cat. I don't know why we have to skin cats, but like there's a lot of different ways to build a successful football team, right? And it doesn't just have to be some of the old school philosophy. Like forever, it was like you have to win the Super Bowl. You have to have a defense and a run game, right? And that's been proven not true. Like if you don't have a great offensive line, there's a lot of things you can do to scheme away from it. But if you do have a great offensive line, like Cleveland, you mentioned, like they're also able to make any player look great. Yeah, and Dearness Johnson, right? Like, so there's definitely advantages and disadvantages. But the thing I loved about what the Bengals did is they made a strength elite, right? They went from T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, which is a good one too, to adding Jamar Chase to how the hell are we supposed to cover those three guys? Mm-hmm. So I think trying to get as many different pieces of your team to be elite is a great way to build a team. Absolutely.
Now let's move on to the third topic, Elliot. This one I think is probably the hottest take of the three, surprisingly. Apparently the Bucs are not a lock to win the NFC South, in my opinion, because looking at this division now, I know that obviously New Orleans, they were able to take down Seattle. They're 4-2, so they're not far behind. They have yet to play the Bucs yet this year. Atlanta has started to come back from the dead. They're now 3-3, even though they were doing everything they could to give that game back to Miami. And Carolina's defense is still pretty good, and Gilmore's going to be coming back. I think McCaffrey should be back by week 8, week 9. I think it's week 9. But either way, what I'm getting at is that I expected this division to kind of just be a runaway. I thought it was going to be probably closer to like 13-4 or 14-3 for the Bucs, and the rest of the teams would probably be 8-8. And that might still happen. There's still a lot of season left, and we still have a lot of divisional matchups to go. But I think what I'm seeing right now is from the odds, it's like probably like minus 1,000 right now for the Bucs to win the NFC South. And I just think it's a lot closer than that. So is it apparent to me, as it is to you, that the Bucs are not a lock to win the AFC South yet after week 7?
I wouldn't lay them. I wouldn't lay minus 1,000, but I would be pretty shocked if they don't win the division. I got them pre-season at minus 155, which seemed like one of the bigger misprices out there. Panthers have lost 4 straight games. Mm-hmm. Sam Darnold, it looks like the wheels fall. I mean, he got benched against the Giants, who came in allowing that.
Was it PJ Walker who came in?
Yeah.
XFL great?
Yep,
okay.
PJ Walker came in. The Saints, they struggled against Geno Smith and the Seahawks. I mean, we just talked about, we made fun of the Lions for DeAndre Swift being their top receiver, but the Saints right now, their top receiver is Alvin Kamara. But they do get Michael Thomas back, and we'll see what kind of impact that can make on their team. The Falcons, like you said, they're now 500. Helps when you play the Jets and the Dolphins in back-to-back weeks, right? That's kind of – but the Bucs obliterated the Falcons that first game.
Bad. Now,
you can make an argument that the Saints could make some noises, but the Saints, for them to have a chance in the division, I think have to win this game as 4.5-point dogs to make it close and try to get that tiebreaker.
The only thing I was going to say, the one caveat about that Atlanta game, just because I remember I was watching a lot of that game. I think I had Kyle Pitts to score a touchdown in the game. It doesn't matter, but the point was that we were entering the fourth quarter, and I think it was only like a 3-point, maybe a 1-score game, and then Matt Ryan just went Matt Ryan and threw 2 pick sixes, and that was it. And then Bucs basically covered like it was like nothing. So if you just looked at the final score, you would almost think like, okay, well, the Bucs were clearly in control the entire game. They dominated them front to back, and while they did, it was just a lot closer of a score. I'm not saying that all of a sudden Atlanta is a live home dog when they eventually host Tampa a few weeks from now. But I'm just saying that I feel like the Bucs I feel like the margin for error is less than people think. Like I feel like they're, maybe one bad injury away. Like maybe like their wide receiver depth is obviously what keeps them ahead. But I mean, I feel like if injuries they've been one of the more luckier teams, I think, from injury as well. I mean, outside of Gronk and some of their secondary, like offensively, they haven't really suffered many injuries on that front at all. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, if they start to, is their depth going to be challenged if we start to see some injuries, which always seem to take a toll on attrition at the worst week and the worst possible time. So yeah, those are my apparently topics. Whether or not you agree or not is up for you to debate, but we'll have more hot takes next week. Now we're going to jump into some futures odds, Elliot. And I sent you 3 teams before we started the show with just kind of teams on the rise, maybe teams that we could maybe take advantage of. And generally, I was trying to find a team that is maybe on the downswing that maybe we could jump up on. But I think there's more value in some of these other teams. So the first team we're going to look at is the Tennessee Titans, Elliot. And the Tennessee Titans, with probably 2 of the best wins of the season so far, back-to-back against the Bills and the Chiefs, their Super Bowl odds are 16-1. And basically, Derrick Henry to win MVP is also 16-1, which is insane because a running back just generally doesn't win MVP. I think he's like 7th on the odds board. Mike Vrabel, Coach of the Year, 25-1. And the Titans just to make it to the Super Bowl at 6-1. So, Elliot, if you had to bet a unit of your hard-earned FTN dollars, which one of these 4 futures bets would you consider making for the Titans?
It wouldn't be Derrick Henry MVP because there's just too many quarterbacks having elite seasons right now. I don't think Vrabel's going to win Coach of the Year just because historically you have to win 4 more games than you won in the year past in order to do it, or you need to be a first-time head coach. So those are the 2 that I don't feel good about. And 6-1 compared to 16-1, I think I'd much rather 16-1 to win that extra game where there's even hedging opportunities or I just think there's a lot more opportunities for profit at 16-1 to win the Super Bowl than 6-1 to win the AFC. And I think the thing that's really interesting about the Titans is that we saw A.J. Brown finally be healthy and not have eaten Chipotle, right? And we saw what he can do. And if Julio Jones was ever healthy, that offense is incredibly dangerous and can beat you in a lot of different ways. And we've seen Tannehill in his career there be incredibly efficient. So this is a scary offense. And whenever you can put up points the way they can put them up, and they're starting to now, right? Beating Buffalo at home and then beating Kansas City at home. Those are 2 massive wins, and they can go toe-to-toe with basically anyone in football. So if I had to pick one of those, it would be Titans Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I'm with you about the Derrick Henry part because while he would have to have probably like LT touchdown numbers, 2,500 yards rushing, and even then, he might not be a top 3 finalist. Like last year, he rushed for 2,000 yards, and he wasn't even a top 3 finalist for the MVP spot. Now, he won Offensive Player of the Year quite handily, but running backs just don't win MVP. They haven't won. The last one to win, I believe, was 2012. That was Adrian Peterson, and he rushed for 2,000 yards. And part of it was the narrative because he was coming off a torn ACL. So a lot of people weren't thinking highly of the Vikings. And then obviously AP just kind of went nuts. And that obviously led him to that. And I think there wasn't probably a standout quarterback at that time that was putting up numbers like a Kyler Murray is, or a Josh Allen, or even a Dak Prescott. I think the Super Bowl odds, I think, is probably what I agree with you. I think I would take that one over the AFC, mainly because I think they're going to be underdogs in the Super Bowl no matter who they play in the NFC. So you're getting just better value taking the Super Bowl odds than the actual AFC numbers, especially with the AFC. I mean, you could argue the top 5 AFC teams are probably more tough than the top 5 NFC teams. I mean, I don't know. It's a lot closer than it used to be. It used to be the NFC was always very top heavy comparatively to the AFC. But this year, I feel like it's going to be a gauntlet to get to the Super Bowl through the AFC channel. I think it's probably going to go through Buffalo if you had to pick a team to get the 1 seed. And Vrabel, that one's a tough one just because with Coach of the Year, well, first off, unless you're giving like awesome anecdotes routinely, like Brandon Staley is, like already the narrative is in his favor. So it's very difficult if you're already a winning team and then Staley is coming out and being like the voice of reason on like vaccination and John Gruden stuff and whatever else, then it's kind of difficult to want to overthink that for him. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Super Bowl odds is probably the best one to do of the 4 right now. So that's where I'm leaning as well. Next team, we're going to stick with my boys, Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, their futures odds for this season now down to 11-1 to win the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott is a co-favorite to win MVP with Kyler Murray. Micah Parsons still the favorite as well for Defensive Rookie of the Year. That's down to plus 225. He opened around the plus 600 range. And the Cowboys to win the NFC also at plus 600. So again, I posed the question, Elliot, of the four, any of these tickle your fancy of one that you would like to bet on and put a hard-earned unit of your money?
Yeah, to be honest, I love this Cowboys team. Dak Prescott is playing at an MVP level.
This is why I brought him on. You're just going to talk it up. I'll let him go. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got Prescott preseason at 25-1 to win MVP. I have Trayvon Diggs at 65-1 to win Defensive Player of the Year, and I have Micah Parsons at 6-1 to win Rookie of the Year. So I don't know if I'd want to add any more. Right, that's the tricky part of this question. I think that the Cowboys are the second best team in the NFC. I actually like them over the Rams. I like them over the Cardinals. I think the Bucks, I lean there. But they've gone toe-to-toe with everybody so far, and they've looked phenomenal. And one of the things I love about the Cowboys is that they can win in a lot of different ways. And you mentioned their offensive line, their weapons. They're still going to get Michael Gallup back, who's probably a top 25 receiver in the NFL. They can just – and their defense isn't particularly good, but they're opportunistic. Like Parsons makes a lot of mistakes, but he also makes a lot of plays. So does Trayvon Diggs. And I like defenses that turn the ball over with elite offenses, because if you turn the ball over once or twice against the Cowboys, you're probably not going to be able to keep up with them. So I actually don't hate Cowboys Super Bowl at 11-1. I think they're going to be a top 2 seed. I think they are going to run through the NFC East, right? Unlike the Rams and Cardinals, they're going to get beat up by that division a little bit more. So I don't hate 11-1.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I would say too is the one thing that's beautiful about the bets that you just mentioned is that you bought high, like at the time. Like now you're getting pretty much the worst odds you could get for all three of those markets, just because of them being a public team, but also just performance. Like Trayvon Diggs, I'm fairly certain wasn't even listed as an option for Defensive Player of the Year before the season started. I think you
took to week 3. Week 3 he came out. I even tweeted it. I was like, "Is there anywhere that anyone sees?" And it came out at 65-1. The next week it was 20-1, and then it dropped to 5-1.
Yeah, and I think I have to double check again. I didn't look exactly at the odds there, but I'm fairly certain if he's not the favorite, it's Myles Garrett who's the favorite, and then he's just slightly behind him, and then you got Aaron Donald and TJ Watt right behind him as well. I still, if I had to make a pick, again, it doesn't really matter because you got it at 65-1 compared to 5-1, so you're laughing no matter how it goes. But I still think Myles Garrett is probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year just because he's going to rack up so many sacks throughout the season, and just looking at some of the opponents that they have coming up, some weaker offensive lines that he can exploit. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, at the beginning of the year, I put money on Aaron Donald just because I thought this would probably be the last year that you would feel good about betting on Aaron Donald, just because, again, he's getting to be 31 years old. He's still effective. He's still one of the, if not the best defensive tackle in the NFL. He's just not going to rack up the numbers of a defensive tackle. Like, the one thing that's always been beautiful about Aaron Donald is he'll get like 15 to 20 sacks from the defensive tackle position, which historically doesn't get more than 10 sacks a year, just because that's just usually where they're playing against guards or center, and they're getting double, triple teamed. So it's difficult. So Parsons, I think, just the narrative, I just don't think there's been another defensive rookie that has stood out enough the way that Parsons has, especially with his versatility of being able to play on the line, and then also with the back seven in the linebacker spot. But I think Dak is the one that I've been the most impressed with, mainly because it's all been accuracy. It's not been like, part of what the appeal of Dak is almost, he was like a Cam Newton light, like that he could kind of be a little accurate, but also make a lot of plays with his legs. And like last year before he got hurt, he had like 4 rushing touchdowns in the first 5 games. He had like 8 the year before. And you could always kind of count on him and Zeke to be, he hasn't even really ran the ball at all this year. He doesn't have a rushing touchdown, which shouldn't surprise people coming off an ankle injury like that. But at the same time, that's what's been probably the one thing of reason why I think Kyler has the edge over Dak, like just as far as MVP is concerned, because Kyler has been doing it against much more elite competition, and he's been rushing for touchdowns as well. And their passing stats are almost identical. Plus Kyler has them just a little bit of an edge on the passing accuracy. Because again, you look at a couple of those games, like against the Giants and the Eagles, 2 teams that are just terrible. I don't really have a better way to say it. I know that'll sound like Cowboys bias. It's not meant to be. I bet on teams just like you do. And there's been games this year that I bet on the Eagles and I've just been thoroughly disappointed. And so that's kind of where I'm at too. I think I would probably take them to win the NFC though, because I think just it's going to be a tough road to get to let's say it's Tampa, who is the 1 seed in the NFC. They did obviously put up a good fight in that week 1 game, especially with how messy it was weather-wise. But I just think defensively, there's still a lot of holes that can be exploited, and we've seen that. I mean, you watch Tampa just basically dice them with Rob Gronkowski and the wide receivers. So, okay, so that's team number 2, Cowboys futures. I think you and I both agree that Super Bowl is probably the best value at this point, but you're not going to bet any of them because you've already got the best value on them at the beginning of the season. So that's all that matters. And that's why you follow a guy like Elliot, because he posts those kinds of picks out there on Twitter for people to see. And it's up to you to grab them. And when he's posting that kind of value, you need to listen. So now we're going to move on to the third team, a team that probably had, I mean, you could say the Titans had the best win of week 7, but I think this is 1A. If you're going to be debating, it's subjective. And it's the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Cincinnati Bengals now are down to 30-1 to win the Super Bowl. Jamar Chase all the way up to being the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year at plus 110. Zach Taylor, Coach of the Year. I believe that's 4th or 5th option on the board at 10-1. And Bengals, even though they lead the division, still sitting there at plus 350 to win the AFC North. Elliot, of the 4, do any of these futures for the Bengals interest you?
Yeah, I'm going to jump back to the Cowboys. One real quick point was that Dak Prescott opened the year at plus 165 to plus 200, depending on the book, to be comeback player of the year.
I do remember that. And he's probably
that was
1,000 now?
Yeah, something like that. That was – and the only other guy that could beat him was Joe Burrow. So I put a little bit on Joe Burrow at 8-1 to hedge you off Dak Prescott and Gary. It's going to be one of them at this point, right?
Yeah, because the only other guy that I initially justified in my head of somebody who I thought could win it, just because of the public validation of who he is, just because he has a high Q score, in my opinion, was Saquon Barkley. Because I thought Saquon just, even like Cowboys fans, they like Saquon. Just because they like what he did in college, and they like how, even though he plays for the Giants, like you still root for the guy, especially with how many injuries that he had. So in my opinion, I was like, okay, the narrative is there that if he has a comeback season, he's right there. And right after that Saints game, I thought, okay, the momentum is starting. Then he gets hurt because it's Saquon Barkley. All right. So, back to the Bengals. Of those 4, do any of those, like the 30-1 Super Bowl, Jamar Chase, I'm not sure if you were able to grab him when he was a little bit higher odds a couple of weeks ago. Do any of these stand out for you, Elliot, of that you want to be back for the Bengals, maybe the AFC North?
I stared at Jamar Chase plus 350 multiple times and just didn't end up clicking the button. Did play him a lot in DFS, so he made up for the not betting him on Rookie of the Year this past weekend for me. But historically, it's a quarterback award. However, Justin Fields and Matt Nagy, that's not working. Zach Wilson's injured. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been particularly good. Trey Lance isn't starting. It's probably between him and Mac Jones at this point. And I don't think the Patriots are going to be good enough where Mac Jones is going to put up the numbers. I think it's going to be Chase, but plus 110, that's kind of tough. You feel like you missed the value on it.
Well, the only guy that I could maybe make a justification for behind those two, and he is listed behind those two, is Najee Harris at plus 800, because he is getting the same type of use and workload like an Alvin Kamara. And I'm fairly certain, I have to go my memory sometimes fades, but I'm fairly certain Alvin Kamara won Offensive Rookie of the Year his first year with the Saints, because I remember I think he won Offensive Rookie of the Year and Marcus Lattimore won Defensive Rookie of the Year. And all I'm getting at is just that guys like a Najee Harris, because of the volume and workload, and like he's probably going to be a top, if not top 5, I'd probably say top 3 running back in receptions just this year as well. Plus the fact that Ben can't really throw the ball, so the wide receivers aren't really going to put up 1,000-yard, 10 to 12 touchdown yard seasons like a Claypool or Deontay Johnson could. That Najee Harris is just that he is the offense, in my opinion, for Pittsburgh. So it's kind of one of those things that I think it is a good safety bet that if Chase was to, I don't like to prey on injury or whatever else, but again, it is the NFL and there's still a whole second half of the season. He takes a big hit in week 12 or week 11 and he misses the rest of the year. He might have still enough of the stats and accolades to get to that finish line just because of what he has done so far. But again, guys like Najee Harris, or even another guy like a guy who is starting to emerge. He didn't catch a touchdown this past week, but the yards are there. Kyle Pitts is still sitting there, I think, at probably 15-1 right now. I bet him at the beginning of the year at 10-1. Kind of regret it now just because of the way that the Jamar Chase is just taken off. And Chase was like 25-30-1 to open the season. So of those 4, though, I think the one that actually intrigues me the most is the AFC North at plus 350 because you're giving me an edge. They have a win now over Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I think they can beat Cincinnati or Cleveland rather, and match up toe to toe with them. So just kind of the way that the season is going, especially with what they've shown me so far and how cool Joe Burrow has looked so far under pressure, even though I think I want to say top 5 and he's been sacked. Like, again, going back to the offensive line wide receiver debate, he's still like bottom 5 in sacks. Like, he's been sacked, I think 17 times already this season. I just still think that there's a lot of value here with Cincinnati sitting now at 5-2 at plus 350. Would you ever consider them maybe at 30-1 for Super Bowl? Do you think that's too far outlandish?
I don't think this team's ready to win the Super Bowl yet. I was actually going to say the plus 350 to win the division seems like the best bet. And you see them getting more confident with Burrow too. Their pass rate is increasing every single week. The Ravens I mentioned before, I think they're not frauds, but I don't think they're as good as people thought they were after the Chargers win. Chargers game, yeah. The Chargers win was like their moment. And we're talking about Baker Mayfield right now. They said he might even miss the season. I don't think he's going to, right? But they said that if he had surgery, that might be the case. And we're talking about their starting quarterback. Basically, his left arm is shot for the year because he has a fracture and a torn labrum. Well, that's not good. And the quarterback in Pittsburgh can't throw the football. So we could end up with almost a 2-team race because the Browns roster is good enough for them to make a playoff push, but maybe not the divisional push. And they're 5-2. They're in first place and have that advantage at plus 350. I mean, it seems like a really good value bet to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we're on the same page here. So we're going to move on to week 8 now, Elliot. I sent you 4 games of with spreads and odds of just upcoming games that I thought would be worth betting. The 4 games are Cowboys versus at the Vikings. They were -1.5 or opened at -1.5. Nice little AFC matchup, AFC South matchup. Titans -1 at the Colts. Steelers plus 3.5 at the Browns. And finally, I threw this one in just because it was a shits and giggles type of pick. Eagles -3 at the Lions. Of those 4, Elliot, is there one that you would want to bet on or a side or of the 4 games, or are you just trying to stay away from those?
Titans -1 would probably be the one that I lean into most. And I don't love betting road favorites, but it's 1 point. This Titans team it's on a roll, but they match up very well with Indianapolis. You know, the fact that the Colts can't cover deep, that's bad news if you're going to have to try to stop A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, who's now going to be another week healthier, right? A.J. Brown's going to be another week removed. And I think what we've seen is that last week the Chiefs did everything they could. They sold out completely to stop Derrick Henry. That's why he averaged 3 yards a carry. And the Titans just said, cool, we'll go right over the top of you. And if the Colts try to sell out to stop Derrick Henry, they're going to get massacred with how much their secondary has struggled. Now, Carson Wentz has played better than I think a lot of people expected, and they should get Quentin Nelson back for this game.
Only 1 interception left this season. That blows my mind. Also, Quentin Nelson, I'm fairly certain he was in that game against San Francisco. I have to double check.
Yes, he was. I apologize. Yeah. But that obviously makes a huge difference to their offensive line.
Big difference.
Carson Wentz not turning the ball over might be the most shocking thing of this entire season. It's just
he was a top. I want to double check, but I tracked the interception odds, like who was the favorite. It was basically like he was in the top 3 of options to throw the most picks. Patrick Mahomes was plus 4,000 to throw the most interceptions in 2021. Oh man, I hope somebody posts a ticket and shows me that because that would just be ridiculous. Of the 4, I'm kind of with you, man. Really like the Titans in that spot. Kind of like the Vikings as a home dog, but again, that's just me being the glass half empty Cowboys fan. Honestly, I feel like the Lions money line at home, like the Lions to me, I don't know what it is, but man, they are so scrappy. I love watching them play, even though like they just do like Jared Goff, it's like bad quarterback Olympics, like some of the stuff he'll do, like, just some of the like brain parts of plays that he'll do. But again, they compete every single snap. And I just don't think the Eagles should be favorites over anybody right now, especially on the road. So I think the Lions money line as a home dog, even though they're 0-7, they're not going to go 0-17, even though you can still kind of get that right now, or I think around plus 400, plus 500 at BetMGM for a team to finish 0-17. Right now, they're the only team that's has yet to win. So that would be the team that you're betting on. So those are the 4 games. before we move on to my favorite segment of the show, which is rapid fire Q&A, I want to get I guess maybe a little bit serious. I know I told everybody we don't take things too serious around here, but I guess this is one little serious nugget just to let people know that I'm not a complete fool. And I asked this about every guest who comes in because, you're just as visible on, the gambling social media and Twitter space like I am, and content creators are out there. And part of what I always find is that people kind of maybe take things that we say like almost way too seriously, especially if it's a take about something. And I just wanted to know is, why do you think people in gambling Twitter take everything we say so seriously? Like every comment that we make is taken as gospel, or, like we're politicians. And, I've seen that quite a bit now, just being exposed to the fantasy space a lot over this summer, just of how people react to some of these takes. And I just wanted to know, what's your thoughts on that? Why do you think the people who follow us take everything we say as just 100% take it to the bank serious?
I think it's because their money goes on it. And so whenever someone's money goes on it, they get incredibly serious about it. And I think a lot of people don't understand what gambling is, or betting. Because I think what we do is less gambling and more betting, where you're talking about playing probabilities. So, like when you post a Carson Wentz plus 1,000, right? And it hits. That's awesome. But what your goal is to hit that bet 1 out of every 9 times, because it's 10-1 odds, so you can make money on that long term, and you understand there are going to be some ups and downs. And you'll get a question like, is Carson Wentz a lock to score tonight? No, he's not a lock to score tonight. That's why he's 10-1, right? Like I posted Trayvon Diggs at 65-1, and someone asked me like, is this a lock for him to win Defensive Player of the Year? And I said, he's 65-1
The implied probability is like less than 2%.
Like, no, it's not. It's just like, I think there's a lot of value in this number. So you'll see me go cold at times because I'm taking a lot of long shots, but then I hit a few in a row, and then it's like, oh, he just won back everything and way more. So I think that once people's money goes on things, they can lose some of the fun of it. And I think one of the things as content creators and as people in this space, we understand that we're going to lose, we're going to win. It's going to be fun. It's going to suck at times, but like what we're doing still is a lot of fun. So it's about having a good time with it and enjoying the games. And like you said, playing the probabilities. So I think that most people aren't good at losing. Most people also will try to pick, let's say you post 4 things and they only have $100 in their account. They just want to put $100 on one thing. They don't want to put 25 on 4 different ones, right? So they just pick one.
I get posts all the time, Elliot, not to interrupt you. Legitimately, I'll post my 5 picks for Touchdown Town. They're like, just parlayed them all. And I'm like, why? I didn't even parlay it. Like, I single bet it because I know that at best I'm probably going to go 4-1. I mean, technically at best I could go 5-0, but it's very unlikely because all these bets are over plus 200. What are we doing here? So, that's kind of what I would say is, and my colleague, Ian McMillan, a guy that I'm a good friend with, he made a great point to me back when he was on during week 3. And he said that he thinks that people just bet too much money on games. Like, that's the problem. It's not that it's that it's money involved, is that they're putting like consequential money down. And I think that's the one thing is that people have to understand from a bankroll management standpoint is like, don't start taking out money that you're going to need to pay bills or rent or food or whatever, like, essential things that you need to exist. And that's what I find is that people are, they love the get rich quick scheme. Like that's why you'll see a lot of brand contents and whatever. They'll put out these, 5 pick parlays of, $100 paying like 50 grand, but they don't post all the losing tickets that person posted on their route to get to 50 grand. Like, and that's the thing is that I think a lot of the time people are kind of maybe misled with that. We should be trying to just incrementally make money, whatever angle it is. If you feel like you can do it with minus 110s, great. If you feel like you can do it with plus 500s, great. But I think at the end of the day, you should just be kind of looking at it as, how can I make money? Doesn't matter how little or how much it is. How can I be more profitable than the day I was before? And I think that's one thing people lose sight of is that they'll just kind of look at like I'll say this past Sunday, like I said Miles Sanders goes down. I was like, man, Boston Scott at plus 2,000 is probably worth a bet now at any time touchdown. And I saw people posting I put like beer money on it, like just because it was like, I don't know what's going to happen with this Eagles team. I don't know if it's just going to be the Jalen Hurts show the rest of the game. But then people are posting tickets like where it's like a couple grand on Boston Scott, and there's still 3/4 of the game left to play. And luckily it hit for those people. But again, couple grand is a lot of money for people. And I think a lot of time, if you have the money to play and bet, that's cool. That person, I don't want to judge that person or unit shame somebody for that, because again, they might have the disposable income to do that kind of thing. But I just think a lot of the time people need to kind of bet within their means. And when they don't, and then their bet loses, we're the first person that they come to. So, and the fact that it's an anonymous Abby with 10 digits in their username. That's
I couldn't agree with you more in terms of like bet within your means. That's everything, right? Like it's the same. Like if you want to do crypto or NFTs or anything that you want to experiment with your money on, you don't want it to be like, well, this didn't work and now I don't get to eat this week. Like that's a horrendous. That's where it's like it's you talk about like a disease versus what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And a huge part, and I couldn't agree at this point the most. Why do you think that FanDuel and DraftKings and MGM and PointsBet post every single time someone puts a huge parlay? Because they make more money on parlays than any other bet type. They want you to do that. And that's why they're paying Bleacher Report and they're paying these other sites. Please post all this action, all these parlays that hit, right? They want to see that someone had won $2 and now they're sweating out, or bet $2 and now they're sweating out $137,000 on Lions money line over Packers. People love that because everyone wants that to be them. They want to have that sweat. They want to be able to say, I only bet $50 and now I've got $50,000. It's probably not going to be you, right? It's the same reason people play the lottery.
And even then, at least the lottery, you can make millions of dollars. Like most books, they cap out a lot of people don't really read regulations a lot of the time on some of these books, but they cap out on how much they'll actually pay you, like, and whatever else too, like depending, it doesn't matter. Like, cause if you're like, well, I'm going to put $5 to make like $50 million, like most books like have a cap on like $1 million or something like that. So just keep that in mind as well. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. And this one I think is going to be valuable for anybody who is listening, who is trying to get into the content creator space, and then also just trying to, if they're trying to kind of maybe make this more than a hobby. This is the person you want to speak to is Elliot, because Elliot, as the chief operating officer at FTN, is one of those people who's heavily involved in both the operations and management, but also acquiring talent. For example, when I got hired at FTN, it's like he was like basically the second last boss that I had to pass before I faced the final boss to get to finish the game. So that's kind of what it is that these are people that are going to have to vet you, and you have to talk about what you do and what can you bring to the table and how you can expand the space. So what I wanted to ask you, Elliot, is what are some of the things that you look for in both content creators, writers, podcasters, when it comes to acquiring talent, and like, what do you look for when you want to hire these kinds of people?
It's a great question. And I think, it's a really good question. I'm not stalling. It's just because there's a lot of different things. So I think the more skill sets you bring, the more valuable you are, right? So you want to be able to do written work. You want to be able to do audio. You want to be able to do video. You want to be very comfortable in a setting like this, having a conversation, know all the information, be able to make it entertaining. That's going to add value. And then when you write, you want to be able to write in different ways, right? So you want to be able to explain yourself, but you don't want to go on for so long that no one will ever read it. You want to be able to put in data, but you don't want to put in so much data that it's just goes over the average person's head. And, I know you have a strong background in this as well, but showing that you have an SEO skill set is hugely valuable, because a lot of people trying to get in this space don't do that. And people always say, how many clicks did my stuff get? But there's a lot that you can do to make it click a lot better, right? Mm-hmm. And then obviously building up your social media platform is huge, because then you come and you say, I can bring X number of subscribers or X number of eyes or anything like that beyond just the organic approach of your website, because I have a following, people care about my work. And then I think another thing that can be hugely valuable is like, what other skill sets do you have? So you said that a lot of people are coming in to this. It was a hobby. Maybe they did it part-time. They want to do it full-time. A lot of these companies, and FTN is one of them, like, we have a lot of tasks on the back end of a growing business. This is not just, I don't just hang out all day and look at football stats and make bets and then just go to bed at night. I wish that was my day, but today I have like 19 different phone calls, and we try to, build technology. We try to build partnerships and marketing and content. Like there's everything, right? So like, can you bring a skill set on top of your content as well? like you are instrumental in helping us grow the SEO process, just as an example, right? Like you brought that skill set. It's not just that I can write, but I understand what I'm trying to do. And I know you meet with Josh and try to, who's our CCO, to do that. We have people that come in, like Stefano's a great example of FTN, that he came in to TQA with me 4 years ago and realized there's a hole in our marketing plan and learned the ins and outs of every different digital marketing platform and how to win in this space. And now that's an incredibly valuable skill set for him. So like, being able to having an incredibly strong background in affiliate marketing and understand how that works will make your job. People will line up for you. The ability to understand partnerships and sell partnerships. The ability to, edit and step in different areas like that. Like whatever your skill set that a lot of businesses need outside of just this, if you can bring that on top of content, you are an incredibly valuable person because you become a Swiss Army knife where it's not even like, okay, my bets went cold or whatever it is, but because right now some of my bets are a little cold, but it happens, right? It's like a situation of how much value can I bring to the company? Because the more things that I contribute to, the more my value goes up, the more money I can make, the more in demand I'm going to be as well.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point. I think the word that stuck out in my head when you said it is the versatility, like just being able to write, do video, and create content. I think that's the main thing that a lot of times I get in DMs of people asking me, hey man, can I work for you? Or how can I get on with FTN? Like, or can you point me in the right direction? And I'm like, well, what do you do? Like, do you create content? Like, do you write? Like, well, I went 14-2 yesterday. And I'm like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Like, like doing picks is not like, it is content, but it is such a small piece of the pie of what you could actually bring to a company's table, essentially. And SEO is obviously one of them. I've been preaching SEO to people just about how it's not just FTN, but there's a lot of different growing brands out there that are trying to be just as impactful as the ESPNs and the CBSs, and how that is done is through search engine optimization and keyword rankings for when people are looking up specific things. And that's how you can implement that, just not only in your daily work, but just also just in YouTube and the way that you would do it there. So that way people could find your stuff as well. And I think that's the one thing that I try to explain to people is that if we were just picks, if this is all it was, why would I work for FTN? I would just tout. That's all I could get money that way. Like I don't have to create content. Like if that's all I was doing was picks and that's all they brought me on for, you don't really need a second platform to do that. Twitter has lots of people like that are available that you can go buy picks from. And I think that's another thing too, is trying to stand out in a market that is being flooded with content creators right now. And I think that's the one thing that I've been trying to do, just as how I was able to stand out, is trying to find angles, like whether it be underdogs in the NBA, whether it be Blue Jays home run props in August that I just was doing basically the entire month to kill time until we got the football season. And then also, or touchdown scores, and basically making a hard and fast rule that I'm not going to bet any touchdown score below plus 200. Like I think I just posted this morning, I've done 103 picks and only 7 are below plus 200. And 2 of them were Kyler Murray. And so it's like, well, what are you going to do? Like, so I think that's what I'm getting at, is that there are lots of ways to be noticed and to get noticed by people like yourself or other people who are hiring, because that's the other thing too, is that I would try to say is that a lot of people will judge you based on what you put out there on your Twitter account, and they kind of make snap judgments on who you are as a person and whether or not you'd be good to work with and all that kinds of stuff. And if you're putting out there just, I don't know, some of these apparently hot takes like I was doing at the start of the show. And that's all your brand is. Like, just there's a lot of people out there already doing hot takes. Like, what are you doing to stand out, kind of thing. So I think that's the one thing that I would say is finding a niche that works for you. It's difficult, but there's still plenty of them out there. But then also, what can you bring to the table from a content standpoint? And it's not just content, because like you said, FTN, there's lots of different levels of this business than just putting content out there. There's the marketing aspect, there's the partnership side, there's the IT side, there's the data side, there's the logistics side of things, of being able to make sure that the products go out there. There's video production. Like, there's lots of different things that people have ways to break into the industry and the market, but it's more about, are you willing to kind of put in the work to be able to be an expert in that field, or to put in the work to be as valuable as you can for a potential hire? So I think in conclusion, I think we're both on the same page.
Yeah, and I just want to add one other point because I versatility and everything you just said, building a brand for yourself is everything. And to the snap judgment stuff on Twitter, because a lot of people in my position, we do talk, right, about different stuff. And it's like,
it's not as big of a space as people think. Like a lot of people who are the decision makers, like they talk to each other. So
right. And it's like, this person's available, we can't hire him right now, which, are you guys interested? Like those conversations definitely happen. But I think the biggest thing it seems so simple, but the amount of people I see make this mistake is like I'm a human being, you're a human being, Matthew Berry's a human being. That's a fantasy football guy more so than betting. But like I see people tweet, and I've been told this, you suck at your job. I would do it so much better. And then they apply. And it's like, you're now asking me to hire you, and the one thing you've ever said to me is that I suck and you're better than me. That's not a great relationship building starting point. So like you trying to say that I'm a better fantasy footballer, better gambler, or better DFS player, or whatever it is, and then you trying to just crap on the people that could help you is a horrendous approach. And it sounds so simple, but I see so many people make that mistake.
And yeah, I know I'll go down a rabbit hole if I start citing examples of that, because I've gotten the DM of, hey man, love your work. And then I just get too busy. I forget to respond. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, you suck right after. It's the same DM thread. Those are the best. So we're going to do a rapid fire Q&A now, Elliot. So I have, out of all the things for the show, I always like to let people know this. I usually share what we're going to talk about before this segment, but everything about this segment, I do not share with people. So this is genuine reaction we're going to get from Elliot. Mind you, I'm not going to ask him anything like too personal, but at the same time, he is going to be awestruck at some of these questions. Yeah, I said awestruck. All right, so we're going to start off with a little layup question. This is the same question I asked to all the guests. First question, who's winning the AFC North, Elliot?
I'm going to go with the Bengals since we talked about it at plus 350.
All right, Bengals it is. This is actually the first pick. From a Bengals perspective, it's always usually been Browns or Ravens for the first 6 episodes of the show. All right, question number 2, and just a little context, if you can't tell, Elliot is a pretty big dude. He's 6'5", I believe. I think maybe 6'6", and I'm 6'2". So to me, that's a big person. Like it's rare that I ever need to look up to somebody when I meet them. And as far as I know, just speaking, you played football growing up and played football in high school, and I wanted to know, being that tall, what position did you play, and why was it offensive line?
Yeah, I'm 6'4". I did not play in high school because I shattered my leg in 7th grade. Oh. So my leg got caught in a pile up and broke playing football. And I broke 7 bones in my leg and tore every single ligament.
Well, this question went horribly.
Yeah, no, when Joe Burrow's injury, I did more damage to my knee than Joe Burrow did, and that one was bad. So, in 7th grade, got very, very good at Madden though because I was bedridden for 9 months. But I did play offensive line because they were like, "You're gigantic, you're going on the line."
That's what I was going to transition to, because when I was 14 and 15, when they finally introduced football in my town and we were actually able to play, I was 6'2", but I was a soaking wet, 155, 160 pounds. But because I was taller than everybody, they just assumed that I had all this upper body strength. And it's like, dude, I cannot pass pro. I'm 15 years old. There's a 12-year-old who's 200 pounds who's running me over and over again because I can't keep him off me, kind of thing. So what are we doing here? And they finally put me over to safety, and then I actually ended up playing actually kind of well, which is why I wanted to ask a follow-up question. Was there a position in football that you wish you played but never got the chance?
Yeah, tight end. I ended up playing baseball because I kind of lost a lot of my athleticism after that, but still had really good hand-eye coordination. Have good hands, but not a lot of speed. But if everything would have gone differently, I wish I could have played tight end.
So you're who would I equate to that? Just an NFL comp. Good hands, not very fast.
Jason Witten.
I was going to say Mercedes Lewis or something like that. This is a comparison. All right, next question. This one is called F, Marry, Kill. We're going to keep it G-rated, so I don't say what F means, but you can use your imagination. So, Elliot, I'm going to present to you 3 people, and you have to decide who you're going to F, marry, or kill. First person is someone who believes tequila is for chumps. Person number 2, someone who thinks Adam Gase actually did a good job as the Jets head coach. Person number 3, a person who believes that Derrick Henry is the best investment to make in daily fantasy. Basically, the three worst people that you could find.
Yeah, I'm gonna marry the Derrick Henry person because at least there's some arguments to be made for it. I'm definitely killing the tequila person, and then the Adam Gase person. I guess this is a family show, so I don't want to make the joke that I want to make, but I'll say that hate is a fun. It's a thing that people talk about, so that would be that one.
All right, true or false? You have not stayed up past 9 p.m. on a weekday since 2018.
I was up past. This is the thing, man. Like in the off season, I will start my days around 5 a.m. But during the season, games go to 11:30. I'll watch all the primetime games. So waking up at 5 a.m. just isn't a thing during the season. So I'll go to bed at like 11:30 or 12 now during the season.
To put it in context, so I'm way East Coast. I'm past East Coast compared to Eastern time zone. So I'm in the Atlantic time zone being in Canada. So by the time the games are finished, it's 1:30 in the morning, my time, and then my kids get up at 6. So it's been Mondays and Tuesdays are just I'm a zombie. So I would say I have empathy for you, but I don't. So just that's the way it goes. So all right, next question: jerseys. You wear a lot of them. Obviously, Thursday show challenge with Ray and Brooke before the Thursday night football game. You guys like to be able to just see who can outdo each other from maybe it's an obscure jersey or maybe it's just a really awesome, good classic, maybe a Mitchell and Ness jersey. I'm not sure. But either way, if I was to set an over-under line of 42.5 jerseys in Eliot Crist closet, would I be wrong to bet the over?
You would be. It's under that. I will say that at one point I had like 115 jerseys or something like that in high school.
You're gonna be like clothing the homeless at this point.
Well, I started a jersey business. Basically, I told everyone that I had a guy. I didn't have a guy. I just bought them off eBay, but I would sell them to people for $60 a pop, and I would get them for $30-$35. So that was like my high school hustle for whatever. And then when I got to college, I looked at my jersey collection. I was like, "There's 120 of these." Like I would buy the most obscure player jersey that I could find because I wanted to be the only one with that jersey. So like, I had a James Hardy Buffalo Bills jersey, like just random players. Like, oh, this guy was a 3rd round pick. He's the 4th receiver. No one's gonna have this. Yeah. So I ended up giving a lot of them away. So that's it. The collection's probably down to about 30 at this point, but at one point it was in the hundreds.
Because that was going to be my follow-up question, and it might be hardy now, me asking this. I was going to say, what's the most obscure jersey you own? I'm assuming you don't own the Hardy jersey anymore. So now, based on the 30 that you have, what is the most obscure jersey that you own?
I have a Jaguars jersey that is a Russell jersey. So Russell only made jerseys for 1 year in the NFL, and it was actually the year before the Jaguars came into the NFL. But when they announced the Jaguars, they granted them the Russell jersey.
1994, 95?
Yeah, it was 93, and then I think it was 94, and then the Giants came in 95, or 93, 94, whichever it was. So I have an authentic Jaguars Russell jersey, despite the fact that they never played in it. And then someone put a number 55 because it was their top player in 95 or 96 and had that. So I have just a random Jacksonville Jaguars jersey that never actually existed in the NFL.
Okay, we're going to go to the last question now, Elliot. If someone offered you 20,000 to 1 odds for the New York Jets to make the playoffs in 2021 and you had to bet a full unit of your money, would you take that bet?
I know that math says I'm supposed to, but no. They're not. When Zach Wilson's out a couple of weeks, like this is they're going to win 1 or 2 more games this year. They're not going on.
That is the right answer, because if you were going to make a Jets case, I was just going to be like, all right, the show is over. I can't top that. That's too much. All right, now before we go, Elliot, tell the folks at home how they can find your work, what you've got going on. I know you've got probably some same game parlay articles coming up at FTN. Just illustrate some of the content that you've got coming out for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Elliot Crist. All my work can be found on any of the FTN sites, FTNBets.com. So much free content, same game parlays. Every Friday I put out my 3 favorite player props on video. Saturday there's 3 free bets on Caesars. So try to continuously give out free betting action. Always tweeting, but FTNBets.com, you can find every single thing you're looking for from a betting perspective.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's all from me. Thank you to Elliot Crist for joining me for episode 7 of Dog Day Afternoon. And just like he said, all of my writing content as well is over at FTNBets. You can catch me every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern for Touchdown Town, where I give out my best touchdown scores of the week. So thank you for watching Dog Day Afternoon. I'm Gilles Gallant with BetsTV. Bon chance.